Dege drolor zambe ze parche Balden lame shabla solvade Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Monishas Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Monishas Aneka Uta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Monishas Uta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke Kudanda Gelo Pakyuke Sundanda Gela Pakyuke Tugdanda Geyi Tenyerme Chik Jingil Makyuke Kudanda Gelo Makyuke Sundanda Gela Makyuke Tugdanda Ge Chiktu Jingilo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Munye Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Munye Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Munye Swaha Sashipeke Choshimeto Tramari Rabalingashin Nide Gempadi Sangeshin Mikte Ulvarki Drokuna Namanda Shingla Chepar Shoyi Damang Guru Ratna Mindrala Kam Niryatayami Sangye Chedan Soge Chonam Lai Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchre Sangye Druparasho Sangye Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchre Sangye Druparasho Sangye Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchre Sangye Druparasho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Rowa Quinge Danam Chit Sampa Tamche Ketu Dage Cheten.
Good morning. Lama Tsongkhapa, in one of his teachings, said,
Sangna Sadang Lamyang Sang, Samba Ngengna Sadang Lamyang E, Tamche Sampadala Ra Le Pes.
if thoughts are virtuous, sampas are thoughts, the mind, if the mind is virtuous, if when we say thoughts, we mean also emotions. So if thoughts are virtuous, if the mind is virtuous, then the stages and the paths are also virtuous. The path that one follows in life and the steps that one takes in life, those are also virtuous. You can read it on many different levels, but for now, let's look at it like this. If the mind is virtuous, then the stages and the paths are also virtuous. Sampa nyena, saden nanyen. Sang means virtuous, nyeng means negative. So the opposite. So let's remember that virtuous is that which brings to a state of well-being and happiness. Non-virtuous is that which brings suffering. So a virtuous food and a non-virtuous food. This is what we mean by these two terms. So when the mind is negative, is not virtuous, the stages and the paths are also negative. Tamche, all depends on the mind. And in a sutra of Buddha, it said, Jikten means the world, existence. Jikten, not so. So the different worlds are born from action, are born from karma. And when we look, where is action? Action is in our intention. Action comes from intention, is born from intention. We can do many things in our life. We can take care of our family, try to help the people around us. We can take care of our own livelihood. We can study a certain spiritual tradition like the Buddhist one. We can do our best to practice correctly, meditate. We can do many things, but what determines the direction our actions take is our intention. The why we do what we do. I mean, what's behind it? For this, it's also described like the metaphor that helps me is the bow and arrow. So pulling a bow and arrow is the actual action, what I say, what I do physically, mentally, verbally, the actual action. But what changes the result is how I aim the bow and arrow. Because if I hold it down low, it'll have one result. If I hold it up high, it'll have a completely different result. You know, holding the bow and arrow with the same intensity, the same strength, um, the result will be completely different depending on where we aim it. So this our motivation directs the action and it determines the type of result that our actions will have. And if we observe normally the things that we do, what are our intentions at the base in a spontaneous way? We want to be well. We don't want to suffer. Everyone or just me? Just me. And if the others are doing well, that's great. But I need to be happy. Well, we start there. I don't know if I should open this door or not, or leave it closed because if it's dangerous if we go through that door. What happens is the basis of our motivation is made up of two parts. There's one part that has to do with, how can I call it? Desire, this craving to be happy and not suffer. And when we see the 12 links of interdependence, 12 I hope you all, there's someone here that remembers the 12 links of interdependence. So what happens? They explain how this cycle of existence, how the cycle of existence works, how we work. Starts with ignorance, a karmic formation, consciousness. There's the psychophysical result, and then we have our senses, and from our senses comes contact. And from contact comes sensation. From sensation or feeling comes craving. Craving is this attraction to happiness and aversion to suffering. So every time we have a feeling, a sensation, inevitably there's a reaction. We're not able to have a feeling and to stay completely indifferent to that sensation. When it's pleasurable, inevitably we generate attraction. When it's displeasurable, then we generate aversion, and this is a sepa in Tibetan, craving. After this, once we have this first desire, it's very it's not conceptual. It's archaic, we can say. It's really at our core. Then we have the more conceptual part where we project our happiness or suffering onto one thing or another, which is it's translated as attachment, but let's leave this translated lempa in Tibetan. This means I direct that desire onto one thing or another. The door that I didn't want to open before, but it's still there. Let's just peek inside. The other day, I heard, as I was in the car coming back from Milan last Wednesday, I was listening to someone who spoke at a conference, and there was a part that talked about psychology. What part of psychology I won't even be able to tell you, but he said something that made me really reflect. He said something similar. He said, in our psyche, the mind of the human beings is stratified, and at the basis are the feelings, the sensations, and from sensations come emotions. From emotions comes the more conceptual part. And it's exactly same thing that we find within the 12 links of interdependence. Where's the key here where we can do something? Are we able to not have feeling or sensation? Because if there are senses, inevitably there's contact with sensory objects. If there's contact, inevitably there'll be sensation. If there's sensation, inevitably there's craving. And this part, we can't do anything about it. We're not able to have contact, to come into contact with something and not have sensation, or have sensation and not be in contact with something. And when we have a feeling of displeasure, we inevitably feel aversion. And when it's pleasurable, it's attraction. This is something fundamental. This is fundamental to our way of being. But from my point of view, a key point here is between this desire and attachment, or between the craving and that projection of happiness or suffering. If we use these terms that I heard the other day, the key is between emotion and the conceptual part, the cognition, where we find a reason to justify, or we find ways how we say these kind of storylines. We try to create a kind of corresponding storyline, a storyline that matches our feelings. But the key, and I'll keep repeating this, the key is, what do I want? Since forever, practically, we live in this dynamic: contact, sensation, desire, attachment. Attachment understood as projecting our happiness onto something, or projecting our aversion onto something else. And the next one within the 12 links of interdependence is SIPA. SIPA means becoming. It's the action. It's when we take that projection of happiness or suffering and we transform it into action. It's no longer a mental projection, but we actually do something through that. And then when there's this becoming, it creates birth, because a new experience begins. And once it begins, then right away there's aging and death, because it's anything that begins sooner or later ends, finishes. So let's just review. The 12 links of interdependence start with ignorance, because we see reality, reality appears to us as if it were autonomous, objective, independent, when in reality it's not like that. And from this appearance, this objective, independent, and autonomous appearance, we develop an attitude that's translated as selfishness, self-centeredness, where we see ourselves as being detached from everything else, that generates attachment, desire, envy, fear, etc. So from ignorance and mental defilements, we act. So we do something physically, mentally, or verbally. And when we do that action, we create a kind of inertia, a potential in our own mind stream. So the first of the 12 links is ignorance. Then we have the second is karmic formations. Then we have consciousness. We have our psychophysical reality, where the cause that we've created manifest on a psychophysical level, and we experience the result, and that manifests in our senses, that manifests within contact. So, so if it's our sight, it's contact with form. So contact depends on the senses that we have, and from the senses, we have contact, and from contact, inevitably, there's sensation. And when there's sensation, inevitably, there's craving, this desire to be happy and to not suffer, attraction to happiness, and aversion to suffering, and indifference to neither of the two. And then from that craving, we project onto one object or another, and we then act. When we act, we repeat and we create a cause, or start again a process of cause result, and against we plant another seed. There's energy. So this action creates another psychophysical reality that in turn manifests with becoming, with birth, and once there's birth, there's that process of aging and then death. What happens in all of this, in the middle of all of this? There are very few spaces where we can actually give direction. But the main space that I see is where I project my happiness and where I project my suffering. Because the other aspects are very, they're automatic. We are not able to manage them. A little bit like, and we all have our traumas and memories, and you can't change from one day to the next. But if we were able to direct our mind well and recognize what's a trauma, what's not a trauma, see where we're projecting or not, gradually with awareness, change our behavior and allow ourselves to see that experience differently, we can change. At the beginning of the practice is about generating the correct motivation. And when we talk about generating a correct motivation, it's not about being a good Buddhist or not. Because we need to take refuge, we need to love everyone, because a good Buddhist does that. It has nothing to do with that, being a good Buddhist or not. It has to do with the fact I want to be happy and I don't want to suffer. That's the first point. But what really can uphold a state of happiness that is sustainable and not momentary? So that first part where we generate the motivation is where we direct our desire. What do I want? I want this so-called nirvana. What I want is to get out of this constant cycle of suffering generated by ignorance and selfishness and envy and fear and anger, anxiety, selfishness in general. So at the root is the ignorance. No, I can't do it anymore. Yeah, it's nice, okay. Every once in a while there are nice things, we enjoy them. But enough, it's not enough for me. A little bit like saying, what do I want? I want to get out of samsara. The metaphor that we can give to this, there are two that work very well. The more traditional has to do with prison, where the first thing that's necessary to escape from prison is to be aware that one is in prison. Because if I see the prison as a safe and pleasant place, and I create my comfort zone, even if there are problems here, and I don't see any possibility. I mean, I don't remember being anywhere else. I mean, would I ever put effort into getting out? And the day, maybe I maybe one day someone opens the door and they say, "Let's run," and I say, "Where? Where should we go?" Okay, every once in a while. Yeah, it's true that sometimes I'm beaten and I have problems with this person, but on Wednesdays the soup is pretty good and I've made some friends. I have my comfort zone here. So instead of going and maybe I just make this prison a little bit more comfortable instead of escaping. That first step is seeing the prison as a prison. And if we were to use this analogy as the prison, normally we are in the state where we want to avoid the negative aspects of prison. We don't want to be hungry. We don't want to be cold. We don't want to live the problems of the prison. We want to avoid suffering. Trying to find pleasurable situations. But what happens is that even when there are pleasurable situations, sooner or later those negative ones come back because we're in prison. So the higher objective is seeing that even those even those moments of pleasure, they're 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 still moments lived in prison, and I continue with that same dynamic. Instead, my objective needs to be getting out of prison. Let's use another analogy. There's something that stinks. Everyone can think of what they want. Imagine something that really smells bad, you know, like just the strong smell. It smells bad, a stink. And at a certain point, we don't want to smell that. So, and then we say, I don't want to smell this anymore. And every once in a while, we're able to cover it up. We spray a little bit of perfume. And when we put the perfume, we smell the perfume and we don't smell the bad smell anymore, and we're happy. But sooner or later, that perfume wears off. And what happens to that bad smell? It just comes back. And then we need more perfume. The ideal would be to take away what is rotting and what is smelly, even if it's not pleasurable and we get our hands dirty. But it's better to take away all of the stink instead of just spraying perfume on top of it to cover it up. Is that clear? The third analogy is that childhood's playground toy, the seesaw. So the seesaw, what's the nature of the seesaw? When you go up, sooner or later, then you need to come back down. So when we're down, this is a moment of suffering, and one wants to go up. And then we go up. It's that moment of pleasure. Oh, I feel good, I'm happy. But then sooner or later, you go down. And we spend a good part of our life being down and wanting to go up. And when we're up, being afraid of going down. One tries to stay up as long as possible, but it's a constant up and down. And we don't understand that being up or being down is the same nature. It's the nature of the seesaw. And our objective should be not to just stay up, but to get off the seesaw. That's the nicest of all the examples, I think. But when the seesaw is down, there's a moment of suffering called suffering of suffering. And when it's up, it's the suffering of change. These are the things that manifest as pleasurable experiences. But when they're upheld, sooner or later they transform into suffering. Nothing negative or bad. They're not bad experiences. They're simply they don't have the ability to uphold or to sustain the happiness. There's nothing wrong with the perfume, but it wears off and it can't always cover the bad smell. Mhm. Just covers it up momentarily. So when we have a suffering that shows up, that's created by ignorance and jealousy, anxiety, and fear, and miserliness, arrogance, anger, etc., hatred. When we have moments of pleasure, and there are these moments of pleasure, what gen what generated the suffering is is it completely gone or is it just covered up? It's there. So sooner or later, it's going to come back up, and you'll see it again clearly. Like this, and it's tiresome to be there constantly looking for a solution that it's never enough. But when we're able to see that those moments of suffering are caused not by the context, but at the basis, there's our way of interacting with reality that's not healthy. Once we realize that, it's possible to change. When we're able to see that at that point, we can think, the thought can come, okay, it's fine to look for pleasure, momentary moments of pleasure, but I want to get off. I want to get out of this game. I don't want to just keep trying to cover up with perfume. I want to take out what's rotten. I don't want to just keep playing on the seesaw and trying to get up on the seesaw. Pleasurable moments in prison. No, I want to get out of prison. And this, in another way, we can say when we recognize that our happiness is not obtained through momentary pleasures, that at the end of the day, physical pleasures, sensory pleasures, the recognition of our image and material wealth, these are just all a trap. But they're not able to uphold a state of happiness. Nothing against these things, but it's not that the more power I have, the happier I am. If it were like that, good. But it's not like that. It's not that the more material wealth I have, the happier I am. It's just not like that. And so recognizing this is having this clarity, what do I want? These things are illusory. It's useless to put all my energy there. I want peace and balance and satisfaction, joy that that is long lasting. Where the more I have, the better I am, better off I am. That is able to uphold this well-being. So what are the things that the more I have, the better off I am? Love, satisfaction. It's not that one develops a sincere feeling of love and then after a certain point, no, it's bothersome. No, I mean the more satisfaction I have, the better off I am. There's no limit. Awareness, generosity, humbleness, harmony, satisfaction, wisdom, compassion. These are all states, inner states. That the more I have, the better off I am. So at the basis, when we generate motivation, It's the first point where we ask ourselves, what is it that I want? Do I want to live in a perfect world? Or do I want to develop my qualities to be able to live in harmony regardless of where I find myself? This is the first question. And given that it's not spontaneous to generate this motivation because we are used to, for a long, long time, we're used to projecting our happiness onto something that brings a short-term immediate happiness and not look medium and long-term. We need to generate motivation. It's when we remember, we remind ourselves what we want. This is when we connect ourselves with a higher objective, a project that's more important. We connect with a dream. Like call it what you want. Life project, dream, utopia. You can call it what you want. But it's the moment where when we generate our motivation is when we connect ourselves with our desire on a that's more long term, answering the question, what is it really that I want? And this is also called in Tibetan Nejung. Nejung is a term that has no translation. It's been translated in a way that, in my opinion, just doesn't work. Nebar means certainty. Jungwa depends on how you conjugate the verb. Means to get out of, to emerge. So it's the certainty to be able to get out. If we look at the examples that we gave before, it's the certainty to get out of prison or to get off the seesaw, or the certainty to be able to clean completely what is stinking, what is rotten. Because what gives me the strength to put effort into getting out of, escaping from prison or getting off the seesaw or starting to clean something horrible is the certainty that I can do it. And for some reason, and I don't know why, but this inner state, this certainty of being able to reach that state, to get out of that suffering of samsara, this cycle of suffering and mental defilements and actions. It was, for some reason, this has been translated as renunciation, but the term renunciation maybe gives the impression of something that it is difficult for us. So I prefer to use the term the certainty to emerge, okay, instead of some kind of sacrifice. No, it's very clear in Tibetan. There's a passage that says, towards the other, towards others is love, and when it's towards oneself, it's nejung. It's this certainty to emerge. When I desire that for someone else, it's what we translate as maitri, as love. So that's why we say that it's about loving oneself. This moment where when we say loving is desiring one's happiness, and I love myself, this is our starting point. This is the most important point, the starting point of our path. As we said as we said at the beginning, when the mind is virtuous, the stages and the paths are virtuous. The motivation determines our actions. So before sitting to do a silent meditation, or meditating on impermanence, or the preciousness of this life, or doing a practice like the practice of self-healing or any other that exists, why am I doing this? What is it that I want? Because the practice of meditation that I do is a tool. It's not an end in itself. What is it that I want? I'm stressed and I want to relax. That's okay. I want to do a meditation practice because I want to have a better relationship, a better relationship in my couple. Maybe I can learn how to manage this relationship better. Or maybe if I do this, I feel like maybe I think that I'm going to make the Buddhas happy and then they're going to grant me my desires. Who knows what people think. Or maybe I just do it because Buddhists do this and I'm supposed to do it. Why am I doing this? And in the reality is, our motivation doesn't come spontaneously. This feeling of wanting to get out of samsara, to wanting to reach a deeper state of peace that transcends physical states, power, wealth. It's a little bit like what we talked about yesterday. If you remember, yesterday we talked about the difference between generating inner states that go from inside out, or generating something inside that is a result from something outside, from outside the inside. For example, using substances or different environments. So what happens is there are situations that help me feel better through through pleasures or recognition or power. Momentarily, they give us a feeling of pleasure. But we need to reach a state of peace and balance and satisfaction that transcends that. So it needs to come from inside out and not from out in. And so when we desire this strongly, with great determination, that's that first step, the desiring that this nirvana, the state that is beyond suffering. I want to develop my inner qualities. I want to overcome my so-called mental defilements. This motivation doesn't come spontaneously, naturally. It requires a lot. One needs to train for a long time for that to become natural and spontaneous. And this is why the first part of meditation practices, we generate our motivation. And it's here we ask ourselves, what is it that I want? And we try to remember once again. So the complete process is we meditate on the Four Noble Truths. What is suffering? Why I suffer? What is it that I want? And how can I get it? And through this, then we take the so-called taking of refuge, the path. We take refuge in Buddha, in the Dharma, and our spiritual community, and our Guru, the embodiment of the three jewels. Why? Because I want to get out of samsara, and then to complete our generation of motivation is there's a further step, which is observing all the beings around us and allowing ourselves to open up our heart to them and wishing their happiness, because we're selfish and we're not able to desire for others what we don't want first for ourselves. How can I want something for you? How can I want you to get out of samsara if I don't have that desire for myself? So once we've generated this strong feeling of wanting to get out of our own cycle of samsara, it needs to be something, how can I say, determining. Something that in reality, it shouldn't be conceptual. One conception, maybe one thinks about it, one remembers, but it's deeper. Maybe the term that can help us understand the best would be, let's imagine a state of passion, of falling in love with inner peace. One falls in love with inner peace, has passion for the inner peace, and there's nothing that can distract his mind from that. Because when we fall in love with something, someone, there are those who fall in love with themselves too. I mean, how often do you think about that thing when you're in love with someone? Once I asked somebody, a girl who was very, there was a girl, she was very in love with someone, and I asked her how often she thought about the person she was in love with, and she said only once, a once that never ends. So I'm sorry, I'm boring. I keep saying this. I feel a lacking here. We need to constantly go back to this. We need this passion of desire, falling in love, because this is what moves us. But passion for what? What really, really will make us happy. As the sixth Dalai Lama said, Sayang Gyatso, if I desired enlightenment as much as I desire women, I'd already be enlightened. And he was right. Because when we want something a lot, tremendously, I mean, how often do we think about it? Just that one time that never ends. We create connections everywhere. One is the crazy in love, and one can, it's not love. It's mostly for desire, for passion. There's this strength, strength that takes someone past any apparent limits. This is that first step that's necessary for the path to enlightenment, where one is falling in love with inner peace, and it becomes more important than anything else. That becomes the primary objective. And what happens is when I fall in love with my inner peace and I see others, what do I want for others? That they too have inner peace. And what I desire for myself, I desire also for you, because different from something materially. If I fell in love with my cup of tea, what would happen? And you get close to me and you too are feeling love for my cup of tea, then we have a problem. No? Because it's my cup and you want it. So what feeling do I have towards you? Attraction, aversion, indifference? Aversion. But inner peace. Doesn't matter. No one can steal my inner peace, borrow my inner peace. No, if someone has inner peace, it's his and I have my own. One doesn't take from another. And the more we're able to generate, the more we're able to help others have their own. So that second step for the motivation, which is called bodhicitta, is when we allow ourselves to take this enormous strength and attraction to happiness and aversion to suffering, where we say, I want this inner peace, I want to get out of samsara, the cycle of suffering, and I take this same desire and I expand it towards others. when I see others, and I say, your happiness as important to me as my own, your suffering is as important to me as my own. I'll do everything I can so that you can be happy and not suffer. And the conclusion in all of this is that can we make someone happy? Can we take someone's suffering away? Have you ever tried? It just doesn't work. So imagine, I don't know if you've ever felt frustrated trying to help someone be happy and not suffer and just not manage. I've felt this frustration. I don't know if I'm alone here or if you've felt it too. Imagine if at a certain point that you want every being, you want that deep feeling, that deep feeling of happiness for all beings, and this desire for all beings to not suffer. So to not have this great suffering, we should be really aware of interdependence. And that concept that we've talked about many times, we're not going to go into detail, like the leaf, the fallen leaf, the perfectly fallen leaf. And if someone is suffering, or if it's in a situation that is difficult, it's because the causes, conditions, and the various choices have brought to that point, and I can't burden myself with something that is not in my hands, but I can interact. I can interact positively. But because I don't know how to interact, I direct that desire. I think I need to do something to help you, because if you're hungry and I don't have food to give you, then how can I help you? Going out, I should go out and find food, even if that's a long process. So at this point, one asks himself, how can I help others? I need to develop my own qualities. I can't help someone be patient if I myself am often angry. I can't help someone be loving if I'm completely self-centered and unable to see other people's needs. And so here we see the need to 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 perfect our qualities, reach Buddhahood to help others. And this is the final, ideal, optimal motivation. It's translated as bodhicitta. The first part of the practice has to do with generating motivation. And it's one of the most important parts of the practice, because if we don't allow ourselves to ask what we want and why we're doing what we're doing with this life, the danger is that our spiritual practice ends up being a spiritual tool for mundane reasons, objectives. Okay. We're using it for instead the taking of refuge and the generation of bodhicitta becomes essential. It's where we ask ourselves what we want. Okay? Good. I wanted to talk about something completely different, actually.
Che cosa vuol dire?
What means knowing? Once we understand, it's the question, we need to remember. It's a little bit like difference. Let's follow the example from before. One thing is, I see somebody, I say, oh, how beautiful this person. I know his qualities. I know how marvelous he is, and I feel a strong, strong attraction to this person. Something else is following totally in love with that person, and I dream about that person day and night. When when I'm when I'm not in love and I think of that person, I there's a certain level of desire. I connect with a person's qualities and positive aspects, but falling in love is something different. One thing is understanding, yes, I want to get out of samsara. I want to reach a state of peace beyond suffering. I've understood. That's one thing. Another thing is constant a, co- a constant feeling that's always with us. Like for example,
코르의 분석라 이면 깨직삼야 미케신 인생권도 다르바 되냐로 중나 대생의 중 개발라.
like Lama Tsongkhapa says, in the three principal aspects of the path, having meditated in that way, having familiarized myself in that way, having familiarized myself with the general and specific problems of samsara and impermanence and the preciousness of this life and impermanence, and one has familiarized oneself and doesn't generate attraction, any kind of satisfaction, this feeling of pleasure in being together with that. So one doesn't generate this even for an instant. Korwa punsokla. Korwe punsak means for the excellencies of samsara. It means that one is no longer deluded by the pleasures of samsara. Not that they become negative, but they're just not enough. One and then from day to night, always from day and night, constantly, one has this inner state of wanting to get out of samsara, desires liberation of samsara, desires nirvana, nechung. This is when this certainty of emerging, nechung, has been generated. And there are two types of this state, nechung pusuk and nechung pusuk is when one wants to get on samsara and then it passes because one gets distracted and thinks of something else and one needs to regenerate it again and again. And that's fine. But it's not that deep state that is present in everything like falling in love. So it needs to be regenerated every day to get, and the more clarity that one has, the easier it is to generate. And then one just needs one prayer, one moment of awareness, one word, and one doesn't need to do, the whole reflection on the Four Noble Truths and what is suffering, etc. One can get in touch with that feeling more easily, because depending on where we project our happiness, that determines our actions. As this was our fundamental point. This was our fundamental point. Something important. It's said that men hun hun pepe, without the sutra, the tantra is only hun hun pepe. What does that mean? Even if in hun hun pepe there's so much, there's just everything in there. But beyond that, the practices that we do, the meditation practices that we do with the visualizations, the recitations, etc., exist as a practical tool to realize what is then taught. Because generating a motivation is important, but then we need the tools to connect with this motivation and realize that if one is able to generate the correct motivation, instead of saying Namo Guru Bhye Namo Guru Bhye Namo Buddhaya or Sangye Chodam, and invent something else, that's fine. But we have valid tools that were used for generations and generations to generate these inner states of being. And on the basis of this too, we say that the practice is divided into 3 parts, fundamentally. 2, and the second one is divided into 2. The first part that's fundamental is called these preliminary practices. And the preliminary practice can be divided into 2 as well. There's the preparation for the preliminary practices and the actual preliminary practices. The preparation comes with the meditation on our breath, for example. Because how can I generate a motivation, direct my mind, if I am not able to direct my mind? How can I generate a motivation that's deep and direct my mind following a process of inner reflection, asking myself or tapping into a feeling? If every 2 words I say to myself, my mind goes somewhere else. If I try to meditate and direct my mind, and my mind is just taken away by objects of desire and aversion. I don't know if it's ever happened to sit down to meditate or follow a visualization, and the mind is taken from one place to another. It feels more like a battle than anything else. It's for this reason that first step is fundamental, is to bring the mind to a state of calm, where we're able to give it a direction. First, I need to tame the horse to then be able to horse ride. Give it a direction, to take it into one direction or another. Because if I try to ride the horse without taming it first, it's going to be very hard. Maybe I'm able to tame it as I go, but it's a lot more difficult. Has it ever happened you've gone horseback riding and the horse doesn't want to go where you want to go? It's happened to me. As a child, I used to go horseback riding a lot. From 2.5 to about 12 years old, I used to ride a lot. And sometimes it happened, I would have horses I wasn't used to riding, and it was just exhausting. It was a constant challenge, trying to show, where I wanted to go, and so with our mind, the first step is about taming our mind. If you do what I tell you to do, it's good for both of us. We go together. This is what we do through those first techniques of meditation, through our breath. Well, first of all, we calm our mind. We come to a state of more balance. We take the reins in our own hands. And then I remember one of the most beautiful experiences that I had on a horse. When you create a kind of when you create a really special relationship with a horse, at a certain point you don't even need to hold the reins. I remember almost from mind to mind, and the horse would go where I wanted to go. You create this kind of relationship, when you're in symphony. So once we've taught our mind, to follow, then we can let go of the reins a little bit. But at the beginning, we really need to um, tame our mind. So we start with meditation on our breath to give a direction to our mind, to teach it to go where we want to go. And once we have a minimum amount of control, then we direct it to generate, first of all, a correct motivation. Obviously, we're not going to talk about all the preliminary practices, otherwise we're not going to finish. Those who'd like to deepen your understanding, not too long ago we explained the 6 dharmas of preparation, and all these passages were explained in detail, and they're very important. After this, there's the moment called there's the preliminary practice and then the actual practice. If we look at self-healing, for example, self-healing is divided into two passages. There's the part called the generation stage and the second called completion stage. I try to just get right to the point, try to be synthetic, concise. What is our motivation? What do we want after having generated bodhicitta? We want to develop our qualities to their maximum potential, and as a consequence, we eliminate our mental defilements, become a Buddha to help other people get out of their cycle of suffering. So the practices that come after that are done specifically to familiarize ourselves with our qualities and consequently help us diminish our negativities, which was our objective. There's so many things and the practice is so rich, and there's so many aspects to it. I'm trying to see what to give most importance to. So our mental defilements are they're on different levels. We have a gross level of our mental defilements, and then on a more subtle level, our emotional level, these are the imprints of ignorance. And then we also have a very subtle level, those that go from one life to another, like a predisposition for a kind of feeling. If we were able to stop a mental defilement on a gross level, coarse level, for example, our mind is not able to have 2 thoughts that are directly opposite at the same time. So if I have a sincere feeling of love, am I able at the same time to feel hatred? No. But what happens if when that feeling of love finishes, then hatred can manifest. If I have that feeling inside, sooner or later it will come out. So when we work on a conceptual level, on a coarse level, there's a long process to generate antidotes and gradually familiarize ourselves with that state. And it requires a lot of time, and it works. But it's not enough to work on a coarse level. We need to develop the antidote on a deeper level, because those mental defilements exist on a more subtle level. So in the Vajrayana practices, the Tantra, there are 2 steps. One is where we generate the antidote on a gross level, and then another one, we generate that antidote on a subtle and very subtle level. So from a certain point of view, the generation stage is where we generate it on a more gross level, coarse level. We imagine love and compassion and wisdom, generosity, awareness, etc. And we generate and we identify ourselves with these qualities on a gross level. And then the completion stage, one way of explaining it is where we generate antidotes. They're basically two: love and wisdom. We generate this on a subtle and very subtle level. It's it's an antidote at a subtle and very subtle level. Do you understand? Is this logic clear? So first, it should be generated on a gross level and then induced on a subtle and very subtle level. So on the gross level, it's called generation stage. And then when we bring it to a more subtle level, we talk about completion stage practices. This is one side. There's another very important characteristic here. Our mind and our body are inseparable one from the other. And from my point of view, instead of being inseparable, from my point of view, they're two manifestations of the same thing. The gross mind, gross body. I mean, what happens to the gross body happens to the gross mind, and vice versa. The mind and the body are not the same thing, but they're two manifestations of the same reality, which is being. It's like a room with two doors. One door is one door, another door is another door, but both doors bring to the same room. So, coarse body and mind, two manifestations of the same. They are of the same nature, but two distinct appearances. How can you, when there's one, there's the other, and if the other one is not present, if one is not present, the other one's not present either. When there are two aspects, if there being one determines the presence of the other, and vice versa, it means that they are of the same nature. That's how we decide that. Even if they have different manifestations, so like two sides of a coin. If there's one side, then there's the other side. If I eliminate one side of the coin, then you eliminate both sides. So body and mind are two manifestations of the same. And there's a special characteristic here, is where we direct our mind, the body follows. The metaphor that's used is, the analogy is that the body is like the horse and the mind is the rider. But the horse is blind, and the rider is lame. It cannot walk. So when we direct our mind, the body follows. In the completion stage, one of the objectives is, first we induce a state of love and wisdom, and we use the term of union of bliss and emptiness. And I think many of you have heard these terms, bliss and emptiness. What is this? This is an inner state that's based on a deep state feeling of love, so-called bodhicitta, and with this inner state of joy and pleasure, so-called bliss, one perceives non-conceptually that everything that appears lacks an autonomous, objective existence because it's interdependent. And this is the union of method and wisdom, new bliss and emptiness. Once one is able to generate this inner state of love and wisdom, one needs to bring it to a deeper state of consciousness. And to do that, one needs to be able to direct one's own subtle energy winds, direct one's energy winds into the central channel. And this is done through the power of concentration. So the last part of self-healing that starts with Om Mani Padme Hum up until Om Vishwa Shanti and Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mahasukha Hum, Om Vishwa Shanti Hum is where we work on and we bring our energy into our central channel. And this is done through concentrating. One great master who Geshe Kelsang Gyatso, who left his body just very recently. There you can see his photo next to Buddhi Amitabha. Lama Ganchen said that Geshe La said that any time that you spend outside your own central channel is time wasted. And Chögyam Rinpoche also said in public teachings, he said that Geshe Kelsang had this ability to bring his winds into the central channel, and who could see from outside the sign from outside, you could see that the breathing would stop. And the one who lives that experience loses contact with form and the five senses. It's a non-conceptual experience, but to be able to induce this, one needs to develop an important level of concentration. And so that's why during this stage of generation, we develop concentration through visualization. Normally, there are quite complex visualizations, and the reason why we have these very complex visualizations is because we're training the mind. We're training the mind to follow what one wants. This is one of the reasons why we have these complex visualizations. Self-healing is extremely simple. There are different practices that are incredibly complex. Just think in the practice in self-healing, we have 5 chakras and 1 divinity, 1 Dhyani Buddha. And Guhya Samadra, there are 32 chakras, and in each one there's a divinity in union with many faces, many arms. So just to say that in this generation stage, one reason why we visualize is a way to train our mind in concentration. We're directing our mind, we're training it to stay still, we're creating mental flexibility. It's one reason. There are many other reasons too. So in the generation stage, we're training in concentration. We're inducing this state of love and wisdom, and we're generating an identity that is based on our qualities and not on our defects. That's already a lot, isn't it? Once we're able to generate an identity where we identify ourselves in a state of love and wisdom and balance and satisfaction, generosity, and all the qualities of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, we identify ourselves with these qualities, and we don't identify ourselves anymore with the negativities and the anger and the jealousy and the anxiety, etc. And then we bring that identity to a deeper level. And then we familiarize ourselves with this virtuous state of being. Obviously, once we finish the practice and we get back to our daily life, there's a moment where our ordinary identity comes back, and our sadness or our anger manifests again. Why? Because we haven't familiarized ourselves to such a degree that it has become us. But in self-healing, this process of generating a pure identity, and the name is self-healing. In reality, it's Lama Ganchen. Lama Ganchen gave the title actually self-healing in English. So to heal oneself, but also it's I'm healing myself. I'm healing the self. I'm healing. I'm We're healing our own identity on a deeper level. So I'm able to heal myself, take care of myself, but I'm healing the I. Even on a philosophical level, we see that the root of our suffering is the ignorance. This ignorance of ourself is that we look to ourself as if we were objectively, solidly ignorant. And we need to invert this. And in the practice, there's the moment where first we ask for blessings, then there's the purification of the elements, and then there's the absolute purification, where we simulate the process of death. It's one of my favorite parts of the practice. And by simulating the process of death, one can generate a new identity. And from this new identity, one gradually constructs this new identity. This is what's happening in the practice of self-healing. So what happens? First, we ask for blessings. This is just fundamental. Then we generate an inner state of bliss through the purification of the elements. When we do the purification of the elements, Yam Ram Lam Bam, from the crown space, and then the wind through the central channel that grows, and the fire that grows at our navel, and it heats up earth at our heart, and warms up the water at our throat, and melts the so-called white bodhicitta at our crown, and that then descends and expands throughout our entire body. This is the process. It's a representation of something physical that can happen. I remember once someone in our Sangha, we were doing a retreat, and one day after a session came and said, Lama, I had an experience. I want to tell you about it. I'm a little bit embarrassed. I don't know how to say it. And I said, what is it? He said, as I was doing the recitation of the mantra, at a certain point, I started to feel this heat from below that came up through my entire body, and my whole body with this inner heat. I had this feeling, this pleasurable feeling, and the only words I can think of, like an orgasm that was just never ending. And I wasn't able to do anything other than to stay in that state. I didn't want to move even a millimeter to not disturb that experience. This is one form of what we call bliss. As we said yesterday, a state of pleasure is it conceptual or is it a non-conceptual state? When a great pleasure arises, are we looking at the past or projecting on our future? No, we see that pleasure and that's it. The mind, that inner state of pleasure, of bliss, or call it what you will, is something that has an enormous power. It's a mental state that's very powerful because it takes us to the present moment. It takes away the conceptual parts. It takes us deeper. So our objective is the objective of the purification is to generate this bliss. So, and to deepen this part, one needs to develop the tumo, this inner fire. It's a process. It's that we see in the purification of the elements, which is first we have the winds come into the central channel. So we bring with concentration, we bring their energy from below above and from above below, and we concentrate under our navel, and we want all of the energy to enter there to heat up this inner fire. This is an experience we can all do. I mean, even physically, if you're feeling cold, now that our bills our bills are increasing, it's time to start practicing the tumo. I've I've tried um, I've tried, showed it to other people. It's worked quite well. When one is cold, for example, if you start moving around, you know, if you might feel even more cold. Of course, if you start running, that's different. But if you just start shaking a little bit and feeling agitated, you feel even more cold, shaking. Instead, if you stay seated, concentrated, you breathe, you bring the air underneath your navel, you keep that hair, you construct, you close your lower doors, the pelvic muscles, and and then bring the energy from below to from above and below. Then and you keep that heat there. It's called tumo, this inner fire. Um, why? What's its function? Why do we have this practice to generate this fire? It's not about saving energy or saving money on your bills. The real reason is to be able induce oneself a state of bliss, not as a final objective in itself, but as a tool. Through that bliss, then, that brings the practitioner to a deeper level of consciousness. So in the moment of the purification of elements, we are training to do this. At the beginning, maybe one tries it and one doesn't understand, Eya lambam, shuddha shuddha soha, and then little by little, we are gradually creating the causes to be able to actually do this. With this state of bliss, in the practice, we imagine. All tantric practices start with imagining and then realizing. So I imagine something, and little by little, what is first a visualization, an imagination, then becomes an actual experience. Then there's this generation. With this generation of bliss, one meditates, reflects on the lack of inherent existence of self and all phenomenon, and that way of visualizing the state of bliss. After we finish Eya Lambram, and there's a Shuddha, we imagine this bliss like a nectar that goes from the crown that melts, and as it goes through the central channel and as it goes through each one of the chakras, it expands through our entire body. And this feeling of bliss, it goes all the way to the tips of the fingernails and to the tips of our toenails. And with this, in this state of bliss, we do the mantra O Sabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Sabhava Shuddha Ham. Om, all phenomena are pure, and so am I. Everything appears to me as if it were objective, independent, and autonomous. But being that it's interdependent and empty of this reality as it appears, we remain in this state. And then we simulate the process of death. As when we say everything dissolves into light, in reality, we're simulating the process of losing contact with our senses gradually. We simulate the process of death. Why do we need to simulate the process of death? One of the main reasons is because it's not possible to generate an identity, so-called pure identity, and based on the wisdom, satisfaction, love, generosity, humbleness, and realizations, rejoicing, etc., based on the ordinary appearance that we have now. So what happens? I mean, so that I'm able to generate this identity, first I need to take away my current ordinary identity. So it's not that we're doing like mass suicide here, but we're simulating the death process, and in this simulation, the inner process of death, we take away our coarse identity and we generate our identity on a pure level. And once we generate it, we construct our identity. We do that with the lotus flowers, the seed syllables, the symbols, and then the Buddhas. Because the lotus flowers represent our energy channels. The seed syllables are our potential. No one that doesn't have a little bit of love and satisfaction, generosity, humbleness, or joy, etc. They're all characteristics that we have that we need to feed, that we need to nourish. So the seed syllables, these are the qualities that we have that we need to nourish. So from the seed syllables, then we nourish those qualities that transform into the symbols, and they should be stronger, and those symbols to transform into the Dhyani Buddhas, representing our qualities developed to the maximum potential. And then we conclude this phase with what's called the vase initiation of the five Dhyani Buddhas, where we concentrate on each of the Dhyani Buddhas, of the five Dhyani Buddhas, and we identify ourselves with this new identity. So if we're able to generate a correct and pure identity from the beginning, at this moment of the practice, then we don't need to eliminate the negativities of the chakra. But because normally we're just not able to do it right from the beginning, then we once again we disconnect from this ordinary appearance that we had, and I identify myself in the pure identity. And the more we do this, the more gradually we give strength to these qualities and characteristics that we have. The more I'm able to identify myself in this state, the more I'll be able to act accordingly. And this next part, from after the five Dhyani Buddhas, there's the part where we don't recite anything. We just make the hugging mudra, is the Vajramaster initiation, where I identify myself with the five Dhyani Buddhas. I'm a being with the qualities of the five Dhyani Buddhas. And then we do the secret and the secret wisdom and word initiation without getting into details. But here we induce this pure identity into we bring this identity of wisdom and love from a gross to a subtle and then very subtle level, where at the beginning what we do is we imagine the inner process, and the actual completion stage progress, there's no recitation, there's no movement, there's only visualization, or directing the winds inside the central channel. And then it's no longer imagined, but it actually happens. And this depends on the abilities of each one, and one's ability to practice is a very high level practice, but it is possible. And at the end of the practice, when one enters in the Bishwa Shanti, one has this pure identity on a very subtle level. from this very subtle level, again, one manifests on a coarse, gross level to be able to interact with others. I want to help. My motivation is wanting to help others, and so I need to manifest myself in a gross level. So we do Lama Kunchusu Lakyap Suchi at the very end of the practice. We connect with, let's say, with the so-called daily life. So, in the practice of self-healing, what do we do? We have preliminary practices. We generate the motivation without getting into details. Some breathing exercises. We pick up the reins. Then we direct a pure identity based on wisdom, love, satisfaction, humbleness, generosity, joy. And then we bring this identity from a gross level to a very subtle level, trying each time to go deeper to a more subtle level. And we generate the intention to be of benefit to others. Are you following? Yesterday I said something that is a little contradictory to what I just said. That first one needs to experience before understanding. But at the same time, that's also true. I know our mentality, we want to understand a little bit. And if we have an idea about what we're doing and the direction of where we're going, that helps us have more trust, more faith in what we do. These steps are these steps clear? Is it understandable? So the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, the five great mothers, we can explain them in different ways. Using more Western terminology, we can say they're like archetypes. They're more like archetypes than divinities. They're embodiments of the 5 aggregates on a pure level. They represent our qualities that are developed at their maximum level. And so wisdom, love, stability, these are things that don't have form. And once we give a form to these states, the virtuous states of being, that helps us connect to that. So to help us deepen the practice of self-healing, it's important to identify ourselves more and more with the qualities of the Dhyani Buddhas. What is Amoghasiddhi? It's the power of action. It's lack of doubt, the certainty in every action, joy, the rejoicing for the happiness of others. There's no jealousy, there's no envy, there's no fear. Ratnasambhava. Ratnasambhava is the action of increasing, is generosity, is humbleness, is overcoming the need to compare ourselves with others, overcoming miserliness too. There's the wisdom of equanimity is present as well. Akshobhya is the state of stability, inner stability that brings a state of love and compassion and patience, spontaneous joy, stability, and that overcomes resentment, sadness, anxiety, hatred, aggression. Amitabha is a state of an inner state of satisfaction that brings concentration. You can't have concentration without satisfaction. What makes the mind jump from one thing to another is mostly dissatisfaction. So correct discernment, concentration, healthy, correct speech, holy, sacred speech, the power of influence, this ability to influence virtuously. Vairochana represents wisdom, the correct view of reality, it represents the body also in a harmonious and balanced state, overcoming ignorance, a way of relating to self and every other thing that is inconsistent with reality. It rep, Virochana represents developing unlimited inner space. The more we're able to connect with the five Dhyani Buddhas, when we see the colors, when we see the symbols, when we see the image of the Buddha, it's not a god, it's not a divinity, it's the embodiment of these qualities, and through which we connect deeply. There is the aspect of asking for blessings, not because they're external divinities. They represent they are representations of of um of the qualities of the Buddhas. It's said that all the Buddhas can be summarized or can in these five Dhyani Buddhas. So by connecting with the five Dhyani Buddhas, we're connecting with all holy beings. If I connect myself with a state of love, I am connecting with all beings who have this state of love. It's not that all Buddhas are the five Dhyani Buddhas and the five Dhyani Buddhas are all Buddhas. No. If I connect with a Dhyani Buddha that has a particular a particular quality, then I'm connecting with all beings who have that same quality. Now we'll do the self-healing practice in a brief way. I invite you to do the practice and also to study it a little bit. Try to understand the passages without hurry of trying to understand everything right away. There's symbolism that's used that is not that easy in our culture because we have grown up in a different culture than the one that from the culture where these teachings come from. So, but it's important to understand the macro to then get into the smaller details, the micro. So now we'll do the practice in a brief way without much explanation. And this afternoon we'll do it more detailed. So first, let's do the mantra of Vajrasattva. And these days, given that I have just a little bit of a cold, I'm just drinking lots and lots of herbal tea. And so I need to. This is another important point. If we try to meditate and we have some pain, or we need to go to the bathroom, where does our mind go? Our mind goes there. That doesn't help at all. So generally speaking, it's important to be comfortable, to sit comfortably, and where one has a minimum amount of well-being so that we're not distracted. Okay, so let's do the mantra. So as you do the mantra of Vajrasattva, I'll be right back. Remember that the mantra of Vajrasattva reminds us of our pure nature.
Sattva samaya pratica dell'autoguarigione si può fare in tante modalità diverse, ok? Si può fare con la recitazione, cantato, recitato, si può fare in silenzio, si può fare con i gesti, si può fare senza i mudra, senza i gesti, si può fare senza i gesti recitando, si può fare senza i gesti in silenzio, però questo richiede, diciamo, che più uno va avanti, in qualche modo più può, tra virgolette, togliere dei pezzi, che non è neanche togliere dei pezzi. Quello che accade è i mudra e la recitazione aiutano, danno tanti benefici. Scusate un secondo che ho dimenticato di Ara. Aspetta un attimino ancora. Ringraziamo Adara perché in realtà i più beneficiati della traduzione sono gli italiani. Perché se no io sarei qua a parlare due lingue. Quindi quello che mi permette di parlare una sola lingua è che c'è qualcuno che sta facendo la traduzione simultanea.
Okay.
Adesso
Now,
ci sono diversi modi in cui
there are
possiamo fare la
different ways to do the practice of self-healing.
recitando i mantra,
Reciting the mantras, singing, or reciting slowly, many times, few times. You can do it also silently, connecting with just gestures, or you can also sing it, recite it without the gestures, without the mudras, or you can do it even totally in silence, which is more difficult
perché i mudra aiutano a
because the mudras help direct the mind. They have a function. At the beginning, absolutely, we should use all the tools that we have at our disposal. And once we have more familiarity, then it's good to have different experiences, allow ourselves to try it differently. Maybe sometimes we feel like we want to do it completely in silence or do it without the mudras. There are different ways of doing it. Now we'll do the practice quickly, trying to concentrate ourselves really well. The different passages. It's taught that at the beginning, all practices should be done in a medium way, and then once you have more familiarity, one should do it slowly in a detailed and deeper way, and once you have greater familiarity, then you should be able to do it quickly, but keeping that level of experience, understanding, and depth as if it were as when it was the longer practice. So sit down comfortably. Sit in a comfortable position. We will put emphasis in one particular point of the practice, and then the others we will do more quickly. Our shoulders are relaxed. Our head is slightly bent forward. Our mouth is relaxed. Our eyes are slightly closed, looking downwards. We are aware of our own breath. We visualize our body as like a body of light, and in the space in front of us, the presence of Guru Buddha. We deeply desire to get out of our own cycle of samsara. More than anything else, we want every being to be free from his own suffering, that every being experience a profound state of peace. And to help every being, we need to develop our own qualities, ourselves, overcome our mental defilements, and become ourselves a Buddha. We strongly desire it. And to do this, we ask for blessings from Guru Buddha to bless our body, speech, and mind, to bless our 5 chakras, so that we can develop our qualities and help every being do the same. From the depth of our hearts, we ask for the blessings. Light rays and nectar emanate from the 5 chakras of Guru Buddha and absorb into our 5 chakras, bringing us his blessings, revitalizing our qualities.
Sambo Pagyu Trashi Pa Tuche Tempe Tinde Yarmoda Pege Drolor Zampe Zebrache Pande Lame Shabla Solwa De Omo A Guru Vajradara Suma Timonisha Sane Kar Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karm Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Karm Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum. Om Guru Buddha 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 Siddhi Hum.
Purification of 5 elements at our 5 chakras. We purify the space at our crown, the wind at our secret chakra. The wind blows inside our central channel and activates the fire at our navel. The fire grows, heats up earth at our heart. The heat of the earth at our heart evaporates the water at our throat. The water goes up towards our crown and it melts the white bodhicitta at our crown and comes down like a nectar of rain through our entire body, bringing us a tremendous sense of bliss.
Eho Shuddhe Shuddhe Swaha Yamaho Shuddhe Shuddhe Swaha Ramaho Shuddhe Shuddhe Swaha Lamho Shuddhe Shuddhe Swaha Bama ho shude shude svoha. Eyam ram lam bam ho shude shude svoha. Om Swabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Swabhava Shuddha.
In a state of deep bliss, we realize that all phenomena are of a pure nature, and like that, so am I. And even if everything around us, and even ourselves, we appear as if we had our own autonomous existence, intrinsic, independent, objective. Every phenomenon exists in relation to others. Nothing exists in an independent, autonomous, or objective way. Gradually, our winds absorb, and we lose contact with the world around us. The earth dissolves into water. The world around us dissolves into light. We lose contact with our eyesight. Gradually, water dissolves into fire, then fire into wind, wind into the space of consciousness. We lose contact with sound. Every sound seems further and further, farther and farther away until it completely disappears. We lose contact with our smell, sense of taste, and our sense of touch. Our conceptual mind loses strength and dissolves. No more thoughts towards the past, no more discernment of our present, no more judgment, no more projections towards the future. Our subtle energy winds dissolve little by little into our central channel, and we experience the white vision, and then the red vision. Our subtle body dissolves, and with it our subtle mind. Attraction and aversion dissolve. There's no more perception of anything outside. We have no ability to perceive any of our senses. No more conceptual thoughts. No more emotions, attractions, aversions. Everything dissolves. And dissolves into an infinite darkness. The so-called black near attainment, as if everything were just turned off. A state where there's no more me or you, here or there. Everything is just turned off. And just like the sun that rises after a long dark night, our very subtle mind, together with with a very subtle body starts to manifest. After the black near attainment, the light arises. Gradually, the light increases up to being omnipresent. There's nothing other than an infinite luminous void, empty of intrinsic existence, being that it's interdependent, inseparable from a deep sense of bliss. And I am, we are, this non-dual union of bliss and emptiness. The luminous emptiness, empty of intrinsic existence. We rest our mind in this state. From the state of clear light, gradually our subtle body and our gross body, together with the mind, manifest, and also our surroundings start to appear. We find ourselves in the body of light, in a beautiful environment. Our body is luminous. We have strong central channel and two side channels that flank it. And in front of us we have Guru Buddha. We have 5 chakras, 5 main energy centers that are perfectly balanced. And each one, there's a lotus flower. Inside the lotus flower, there are the seed syllables representing our own potential of our qualities that transform then into the symbols and then into the Dhyani Buddhas, representing our qualities developing to their maximum potential.
Pamle pema changu, pamle pema changu, pamle pema serpo, pamle pema serpo, pamle pema ngompo, pamle pema ngompo, pamle pema marpo, pamle pema marpo, pamle pema karpo, pamle pema karpo. Om Ahum Tramari Rile Natso Dorje Changori Tramle Norbo Serpo Tram Hongle Dorje Ngombo Hong Ale Pema Marpo A Omle Korlo Karpo Om Korlo Nangse Dorje A Pema Che Dorje Hon Dorje Mikyo Dorje Trama Norbe Rinchun Dorje Ri Natso Dorje Tunyun Dorje Lama Tunyun Dorje Kin. Om Siddhi Hum Om Moga Siddhi Hum Om Moga Siddhi Hum Om Moga Siddhi Hum Om Moga Siddhi Hum. Lama Rinpoche Dorje Kin. Om Ratna Sambhava Hum Om Ratna Sambhava Hum Om Ratna Sambhava Hum Om Ratna Sambhava Hum Om Ratna Sambhava Hum. Lama Michel Rinpoche. Om Akshobhya Hum Om Akshobhya Hum Om Akshobhya Hum Om Akshobhya Hum Om Akshobhya Hum. Lama Che Dorje Kin. Om Amitabha Hum Om Amitabha Hum Om Amitabha Hum Om Amitabha Hum Om Amitabha Hum. Lama Nanze Dorje Kin. Om Vairochana Hum Om Vairochana Hum Om Vairochana Hum Om Vairochana Hum Om Vairochana Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum 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 Om mani peme hum, Om mani peme hum, Om mani peme hum, Om mani peme hum, Om mahasukha 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 hum. Om Vishwa Shanti Hum. Lama kuncho sumla kyapsu chi rangila sel dotril sungne che donga choso nircho tada dom gecho kundo chishin rodun chi dorna ditso namkra gewetso chinye sapa te nyurtu da norbo panzo shamba larkene lame lamge rimpa tarchin sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan dele takto delekpe kuncho sumke jingelo kuncho sumke ngodrubotso kuncho sumke trashisho all'alba
At dawn or at dusk or at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
at dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
In this way, we conclude this session. Now we'll take a break for lunch. After lunch, we'll do self-healing with the different passages in more detail. And then we'll do the recitation of the Vajranaki. Vajranaki is the sutra that comes from the Sutra of Buddha. Was given to us as a commitment to recite here in Albagnano without being able to. Sometimes when you're given the commitment to recite a certain to recite something, you can give that commitment to a monastery or something to do, and instead we weren't allowed to do that. We're supposed to recite this 1,000 times every month. And given there are so many of us, if we recite it all together, it would give a lot of strength to this. It's a sutra that one needs to have his own experience. Many people have had a very strong experience with this recitation. It's a story where Buddha talks about, he tells the story of this being called Vajranaki, this divinity, who in a previous life had this commitment and showed herself in this form. And everyone who will come in contact with Vajranaki will have certain benefits. For example, they will be able to meet the master that they wish. And so we were given this commitment to do this, to recite this sutra, waiting for Lama Michel Rinpoche's swift return. Within all the Buddhas, with all the sutras of Buddhas, there's some that are similar. And we have the transmission of this. We have the commitment to recite it. And we will do this after the practice of self-healing this afternoon. Like yesterday, given that the lunch break is very short and have also many commitments, please, if you are staying later, can you come and greet me later if you need? And see you. I think it's we could follow the program. So I think it's 3:30. Whatever's written in the program.